Welcome to Mysterious Goings On. We're going to get right to the show after these messages.
You know, when I first started writing, there was a couple of choices I had, and I'll just admit off the top, if you're a regular listener, you know this. I pitched about 100 different agents trying to get them to rep my book. And I got somewhere with about three of them. And then, of course, the one that was really, really interested, of course, it all fell apart because it was 2008 and the economy went to shite. Well, that's what led me on my independent author's journey. And that's why I'm very excited to speak with someone who, maybe from a slightly different direction, has also had an independent author's journey. His name is Conor J. Bredin, and he's a thriller author, podcaster, and teacher from Ireland. He wrote his first novel after his better half said to him, "Well, you always talk about being a writer, but you never write." So, taking that advice on board, he knuckled down and he wrote The Longest Night, a supernatural thriller. Soon after releasing his book, he became obsessed with learning more about other authors and started up his really fun podcast, Story of a Storyteller. You got to listen to that one. There'll be a link in the show notes, of course, where he gets to know the life story of his fellow authors, all while having a full-time teaching job. And I understand he raced to get home in time to do this interview, so we've got to make it worth his while. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Conor J. Bredin to Mysterious Goings On.
Hello, thank you so much for having me on. And if my head has swollen so much from that interview, I don't know if I'll be able to leave my home again. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. Maybe apply some lard to either side and just try to squeeze through. That might help.
Bit of WD-40 or something.
Oh, that'll do. That'll work as well.
Yeah.
Conor, Ireland. Do you mind telling us what part, what area?
No, not at all. Funnily enough, I was actually born in New York. My parents emigrated after they married in the early 80s, mid 80s, and I was born over there. And then when my brother was born a couple of years after me, I was very close to starting school. I was already in what we would call play school, preschool, you guys would call preschool, it. Yeah. And it was the summer before I was going to start in kindergarten. And my parents were like, if he goes to school, we're going to have an American for a son. So they very swiftly moved home. And God love my mother, she moved over with me and my 8-month-old brother. And we left New York Friday night, landed in London Saturday, landed in Dublin Sunday morning. And I started my first day of school Monday. So, as I said, God love her. So I grew up in the northwest part of the Republic of Ireland in a small town called Manorhamilton. And now I've been living in Dublin since I started college. So I've been here 12, 13 years now. And I live in the west of the very farthest west of Dublin City with my partner.
Very good, very good. Would that, if it's not too impolite to ask, would that make you a dual citizen or no?
Yes, it does. It does. Technically, I have an American passport and I also have an Irish passport. But if anybody from the American government are listening, I do not have an Irish passport. Because as I learned when I was 16, I've only been in the States 3 times, including birth to leaving. And when I was 16, my mom and dad were like, hey, let's go to New York for a week. Like in Ireland we have a week off, not for Halloween, but it's always around Halloween. And
you guys invented Halloween. I mean,
we did. Come on. So it's our not God given right, because Halloween is pagan. So we moved over and I was 16 and my brother was let me see, he would have been just about to turn 12. Actually, he had his 12th birthday while we were there. There you go. And we panicked because on the way coming in, because my mom and dad were both illegal aliens when they were there, because it was the 80s and everything was easy. And they both got taken into separate rooms to be interrogated. And me, 16-year-old me, and my brother were left there going, coming in our Irish passports. But on the Irish passport, it actually says place of birth, USA. So then some woman on the what you call it, customs border, I don't know, she took me and was like, excuse me sir, why do you not have an American passport? And I was there going, I don't know. like a 16-year-old Irish idiot going, oh, I don't know. So, yeah, I learned my lesson, and I brought for his 40th, I brought my other half to New York for a week, and I made sure to have an American passport going in and an Irish passport going home.
Oh, that's very wise. There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Um, so, do you? I guess you really didn't. It's such a slam bang thing that happened when you were a child. I guess
Yeah.
culture shock really didn't even figure into it. You were so
Well,
young.
it didn't, because like, I mean, any American I talked to while I was, because I do have a pretty good memory, because I was 5 leaving, um, and as well, my parents there was a lot of photos and a lot of home videos, so a lot of my memory is kind of constructed as well. Do you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
but anyone I remember, they would have said I had an Irish accent because my accent was from my parents. But then when we came here, I had an American accent. I was like, no, I don't. What are you kidding? No way. But I had been over it a few times, and you know, you're right. Like, I was so young, there wasn't a huge culture shock, and I mean, as well as I said earlier, I had left preschool in the States, had a couple of months break, and then went into junior infants, is what we call it here, which is the equivalent of kindergarten.
Right.
So I mean, that's a bit of a culture shock anyway at that age, like when you leave one type of school and go to the other. So I don't think it wasn't too traumatic, let's put it that way.
You seem to have adjusted well.
Well, I mean, I never left second school, did I? I'm in the same school teaching. Well, not the same school, but I'm in the same level of school. So yeah, it didn't affect me too badly, thankfully.
Well, okay. So your partner says to you that you'd always talked about being a writer, but you never wrote. So let me explore that. What are we talking about? You talked about being a writer. What were these conversations like?
So I'll tell you exactly what it is. My other half actually got very ill a number of years ago now, and it was life threatening.
Oh,
And we kind of, the two of us, once he kind of gone through the main recovery process and everything, the two of us were kind of sitting talking about, well, look, we had a huge scare there. Like, he was in hospital for months, and we just said, listen, let's talk about our future. Let's really think about what do we want to do or whatever. And I found this book online, and I was like, yeah, that looks good. It was the bucket list for couples, and I thought it was going to be like things people want to do. And that it was just a workbook. I was really disappointed in it. It was just like but to be fair, it did start the conversation. But it was things like, what countries do you want to go to? And there was just like 8 blank pages. And I was like, oh, this doesn't help. But it did start the conversation, and there was lots of, what do you want to be, what you want to do. I mean, I'm in my mid-30s, but I always make the joke, well, when I grow up, I want to do X, Y, Z. So there was a lot of, well, when I have a book, and when I have a published book, and when I have this and I have that, I'd love this to happen. And he just stopped me. He was like, you never write. Like, you keep saying, when I'm a writer, when I'm a writer. I've never seen you sit down, take out the laptop or a pen and paper and actually try to write a book. And that, combined with the fact I was at the time reading a self-help / fitness book called Level Up Your Life by Steve Kamb, Kamb, from nerdfitness.com. And in his book, like, it's really good. It is a lot more about physical fitness and stuff. But there was one thing he said, and it really hit home. And it was, after reading this book, you're not allowed, I'm paraphrasing, after reading this book, you are not allowed to say, I don't have time for that anymore. Instead, you have to say, that isn't a priority. And it's clearly written for people like that maybe say, I don't have time to play with my kids. I don't have time to see my elderly mother, things like that. And to make them realize, well, if you don't have time, you're not making time. So I took that, and after getting the kick up the arse, as we would say here, from my better half, I kind of realized, well, it's not that I don't have time to write, it's that I'm not making writing a priority. So
right.
I just took everything, readjusted, and reprioritized, I suppose is the best way to say it. And a year and a half later, I had a book.
Hey, fantastic! And so you did it, and that's the thing too. I think I had a little bit of that going on. My grandfather was a very successful mid-lister writer for about 50 years. He wrote
Wow.
westerns and stuff. Yeah, and so I understood writing and all that, and I just always kind of thought to myself, someday I want to be like him, and I want to do that. But I hadn't gotten around to it. But when I finally did, it took me about a year to really get this first book off the ground. And my recollection about that was, was similar. Is it's just like, wow, um, I got this done, but I don't think I ever thought of it particularly as a bucket list thing, and I don't think you did either, because you're clearly going to keep writing. It seems so. You marked it off your bucket list, but you're not one of those folks who, I don't think, maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you are, because you're so devoted to writing and your podcast and all that. You have some folks who literally are just like, it's so easy now to get an ebook published. I'm gonna cobble a book together and publish it and mark it off my list and move on. That
Yeah.
doesn't seem to be where you are.
No. I look at, so I suppose the thing is that, like I said, writing a book wasn't on the on the bucket
Right.
list. It was being a writer is do you know what I mean? And
Ah,
I
very
think
good.
that's the thing. I didn't think of it as, oh, I just want to write a book. I want to write a novel, which I hear a lot of people say. And if that's the goal, have at it. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
But for me, it's I want being a writer to be my career, you know. And it's funny because I had you mentioned my podcast earlier. I actually, in my very first season of my podcast, I had a full-time children's author on my podcast, Sarah Webb, and she's fantastic. And I was talking to her about it, and I said, she said, well, will you leave teaching? And when she said that, I had this like, oh God, I don't know if I can, because I absolutely love teaching. I like, even today, I just had this huge eureka moment for this boy who has he has a learning difficulty, he has dyslexia, and he read the word disagreement like in it straight, and the two of us, like, not a word of a lie, the two of us jumped up and like, yeah, and it's like we didn't high five because COVID, but we were there like at our elbows at each other, and kind of we even went around the school looking for his teacher from the previous year to brag and be like, hey, look what I just did, and I think I'd missed that too much. So I don't know what my end term goal is, and I don't know what the bucket list is, but I think it's just is to be a writer. And I think that's what I'm doing now. That's what I'm trying to do anyway.
Yeah, so you hit that, and you didn't. It was not a calculation to try to get an agent or beat your head against that particular wall, correct?
Exactly. I had spent, one of the reasons at the time of the bucket list chat, we'll say, I was a pretty regular listener to a podcast called The Creative Pen, by a full-time indie author, Joanna Penn. She's a British writer. She writes supernatural thrillers. I wonder where I got that idea. And she is fantastic. And if your listeners are people that want to write, I cannot recommend that show enough. It's really good. And she is very much flying the flag of just do it, just go indie, just do it. Because there was a couple of things about going to a publisher that kind of didn't sit well with me. Things like, I suppose I'm very selfish. Things like the name of the book is the publisher's decision. Things like, what does the cover look like? Even things like how long it takes from me writing the end on the final draft to being able to say, hey, it's for sale. Like, that time scale just seems insane to me. And I don't understand. I do, in the terms of I have learned and I've looked at the ins and outs, but I just look at it from the outside thinking that is so illogical. I'm so happy I did it my way. And the fact that the book is mine, I didn't sell I'm selling the book to others, and please, listeners, head over to your local shop and get it now. But it's more like it's my book that I'm selling, as opposed to I gave it to someone else to make money off. That was the kind of thing. It was more I don't know what the word is. It was more kind of a, I don't know, philosophical choice. No, that's not really it.
Sure.
But you know what I mean? It was just more of a kind of a thing of, I want it for me. And that was why I never even bothered. I actually didn't submit it to any publisher or any agent at all. One thing actually you might not know is, in Ireland, the writing and publishing world is so small. Authors can actually submit directly to publishers if they want. Most publishers in Ireland and the UK have, well, not the UK, just in Ireland and the Republic. We can actually submit directly to the publisher and don't have to go through an agent. Now, most publishers then, if they're interested in you as a writer, the vast majority, unless they're being a bit shady, will recommend you get an agent to help you navigate the contracts and the rights and stuff like that. So you can't escape the agents, but it's just one less barrier, I suppose, to publication the traditional way.
Did you? And it's a handsome volume, by the way. I haven't read it obviously, but yet. But it's a beautiful cover,
Mm.
and it's very enticing. And I'll just tell you, tell our listeners really quickly. It's a supernatural thriller, and it's three people come across minor mysteries in their own line of work, not realizing that it's all part of a larger conspiracy of the crime lord known as the occultist to destroy the world. Um, not much going on in this book, I guess.
You just made me realize something. It starts off minor mysteries and ends with destroy the world.
The world.
It does escalate somewhat.
Yeah. Well, that didn't go the right way, did it? That's the characters are saying. What did I do?
I think my characters would hate me if they were real people. I put them through so much. Yeah, it's the cover is fantastic, and I can say that hands up, I had nothing to do with it. I hired a designer, Nick Castle is his name, because I wanted it to sit on a shelf in a shop and to not stick out in the sense of not look amateur and not look
yes.
So that's actually how I found Nick. I actually went into the biggest book chain in Ireland is a chain called Eason, or Eason's. Everyone in Ireland calls it Eason's, but there's no S at the end. It's just something we do. And,
no, there's people in the States say Walmarts and Targets, and there's no plural, but they do it. It's just something. I think it's a human thing. It crosses all cultural boundaries. No,
it does, but I mean, like, as in, which Easons did you go to? Did you go to the Easons on O'Connell Street or the Easons on like, as in Easons is the name of the shop, even though there's no S at the end? It's very funny.
Right.
And whenever you point that out to someone, whenever someone says, "Oh, where'd you get that?" I got it in Easons. And if you go, there's no S at the end, it's like you smack them across the face. It's just like, what? I have seen this literally. I've seen people either take out the receipt and look at the logo at the top, or look at the window in the shop, or even look at the bag going, there isn't. It's really funny. I don't know why it's called Eason's, but it's not. Anyway, so Eason's. I went into Eason's and I just looked at some of the covers, as particularly the I wouldn't call my book a crime novel, but in the categories in a shop, thriller isn't really on the shelf, so I kind of went to the crime section because that was the closest I had, looked at a couple of covers, and there was 4 covers of 4 books. I could not tell you the names of them for the life of me, but I looked at all the covers and I'm like, they're all really different, but they're all gorgeous and all exactly what I want. And I flipped them over and they were all designed by the same guy, by Nick Castle. So I was delighted, and then thankfully I found him through Reedsy. And that is where I got my editor as well, Aaron Young, who is based in LA. And so Aaron was editing it, and then I got in touch with Nick through Reedsy, and I paid for him to do the cover, and he was fantastic. Aaron, the editor, was fantastic. They were both so, I know I was paying them, but I mean, I feel like they went above and beyond in terms of how much work they put in and how much help they gave. Even along the lines of, Nick was like, do you want to put a tagline on the cover? I was like, no, I think it'll be okay with that. And he goes, okay. Do you want to put a tagline on the cover? And I was like, okay. Yeah, I do.
Do you want to go on door number 1 or door number 2? I'll take number 2. Would you like to go into door number 1?
Or door number two? Yeah, it was very much that.
So you did it all right. You hired a pro editor, pro cover designer. You did those things. So this leads me to the next question, though. Did you run into, however, snobbery? Did the people you knew or the people you're trying to get interested in the book give you attitude about being an indie published author?
Yes, but not anyone that I was in touch with directly. Good. In terms of look, I got in touch with my editor and my cover designer through Reedsy, and they know what's going on. They know that if I got through them on Reedsy, that to be snobby towards me because I'm a indie author would be very detrimental to their business model. So no, I didn't experience that. I experienced a lot, and still do experience a lot of snobbery outside of my own circle. It's online, and it's on social media, and it's in groups where people like there's a fantastic, and he is fantastic, radio DJ here in Ireland, Rick O'Shea, and he actually does a little bit of work with Eason's, and we're all intermingled. Everyone does everything, but he has a Facebook group that has like I think 10 or 12,000 people on it. That is literally just the Ricochet Book Club, and it's literally just people within this group going, "Hey, I've read this. What does people think? What do people think?" Or I just tried this and I didn't find it too good. Does anyone know something similar that's a little bit better? Like it's extremely active, and it's all Irish. But and this is no given out about Ricochet or anything, but I even within that group, I'll see people go, "Oh, that's self-published," and it's kind of like, I'm sorry, you don't know the difference. There is no difference as long as there's a professional editor, as long as there is a sleek and within genre book cover, you're not going to know the difference. I mean, when I take that book down and hand it to somebody and show them, no one is going to know that's self-published or not. The only hint might be there's no publisher icon on the spine. So what? No.
Yeah. Did you ever consider, creating an imprint of your own just to kind of give it that cachet a little bit? Not fool people, but just kind of,
just to give it that. Yeah, I know what you mean. To give it that little extra coat of polish. I mean, I didn't. It was something I didn't really realize people would care about until the book was published, and as well as that, I didn't want to get into the kind of legalities of having the imprint and having to get a name and a logo and all that kind of thing. And I just kind of it's something I is on the cards. The Longest Night is envisioned, and he says this without book 2, 3, 4 written, is envisioned to be the first of a 4-part series.
Nice.
So The Longest Night as well isn't just a random name. The whole book leads up to December 21st, which is the longest night of the solar year. So we have the 2 solstices, the winter and summer solstice, and the 2 equinoxes, which is hard to say, the spring and autumn. So like the 4 books would be themed on each one.
That's exciting. I'm glad to hear that too. And also just a crass marketing tip here is, if you want to make money as an author independently, and I'm not saying that's your sole raison d'etre, okay, but who doesn't like money? Okay. Yeah, please. There'll be a link in the show notes, by the way. But the point is, and one reason, I have a series is I'm on book 8 that I'm going to finish this year, and this is what's exciting about that. So 12 years this has been in the works for me, and I'm not getting rich, but my royalty statements every month show that, let's say I do a little push for book 3 or something like that, almost every time the other books seem to get pulled in with that, because people, I guess, look at book 3 and go, well, the first they'll look at it and go, well, this is crap. This guy didn't tell me this was book 3 in a series. Now I got to buy book 1 and 2 at least. That may be one. But the other thing, just maybe, hopefully they enjoyed book 3 and they want to read the others. So I think writers out there who haven't thought about this, take a page, pardon the pun, from Connor's book and from mine. And if you got a property you love and you enjoy writing it and you love torturing those characters like Connor does, make it a series. Do it, my friends, do it. So let me ask you this then, Connor. Okay, we're talking about this whole thing, because I've had that snobbery in my face kind of thing too. Yeah. And it kind of bothered me because, as I spoke to you about earlier, I mean, having a grandfather who for 50 years toiled away as a mid-lister, this would have, he died in the mid to late, or 90s, excuse me. And the whole concept of self-published then was vanity presses. It was not cool, and it's something he would never do, because he had a few books that he didn't get published. And I said, what are these? Because he was showing me all this, that once, and he said, oh, they didn't make it. My agent couldn't sell them. And I'm like, well, can't you publish them yourself? He goes, no, that's not done.
Yeah,
it's not done. Yeah. But if you don't mind me just taking one more second, I'll tell you though.
No,
regular listeners will know this. He did leave me in his passing. His basically his last book, and there were pieces missing, so I had to go not fix them, but add to them. So I kind of got the joy of my life to co-write in small. My name's
cool.
my name is small under his, right? Robert E.
Yeah, yeah,
Trevathan with J.L.E. under. And but I also what I also did, Connor. I love telling other writers this. It's one of the it has sold virtually nothing, but it's one of the greatest things I've ever felt like I've done. I
yeah,
also found in some old pulp. Western magazines from the 40s and 50s. I found some of his stuff. I bought them on eBay and typed them in myself, added those to the book, and some of his poetry. He did Clara Hugh poetry. He was a very witty guy, and also a few letters he wrote to me. I put them all and made this one big volume.
that's
So
so cool.
it was great. It was
That's
great.
amazing. Even
So
to have that
I always
connection with him, and to like, I understand that he's passed, but like I would love something like that, to have like, you know, something bridging the gap between like here and not.
exactly.
And
Oh, yeah, Connor, the greatest one of the greatest moments of my writing life when I was just in college, and I let him read something that never got published, but just something, and he says, I just remember we were at a family picnic, and I said, did you have a chance to read? He says, oh yeah, you've got it, you can write.
oh
That
wow,
was it.
and he said
And then
it
we
so
went and
casually.
yeah, well, yeah. Then we ate some potato salad and moved on. But I was walking on air because here he if he didn't know, who would? So yeah. But I had to. But just to complete this thought, and I'm sorry for the going chasing rabbits for a moment there.
No, it's fine.
But
Chase
the
all the rabbits you want.
that's good because I like a nice what is that Welsh rabbit? Oh no, I'm just kidding. That's the wrong thing. But where I was going with this is though once I did make the decision because and I was so worn down after a year and a half of trying to get editor or
Mm.
agent's attention. I just said, screw it. This looks like this. You can do it yourself thing. Looks like it's finding some new purchase.
Yeah.
People seem to be more open to it. But even then, I got like a lecture at our local library. Like 70 people showed up in a book signing. But even then, I kind of got that kind of here and there from people who showed up, even kind of going, oh, well, if I, oh kind of like that I enjoyed
It's
your
like,
talk. It's so nice you could find some way to get your book out, that kind of
yeah,
thing.
yeah, and that's the thing that just irks me so much. It's like, we mentioned the word gatekeeping. It's just, this thing of like, well, no, you're not a real writer. It's like, well, why? Because some one or two people in an office somewhere didn't like my book. Well, here I have 400 and something people signed up to my email list because they do like my book. So why is the person over here who's in an office, why is their opinion more or less important than the person over here?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
It's maddening, and I finally got to a point, and I finally got to a point also where I just don't care anymore what they think. I can look at my royalty statements, and again, I'm not getting rich, but people are buying my work. I'm not getting all the reviews I'd like on Amazon, but whatever. I mean, we all fight for reviews, we claw for them. Right?
Sometimes you get reviews you don't want too, so it all works out.
Yeah. You know what? My favorite here. Regular listeners are going, oh god. Okay, regular listeners,
Here
go
he goes
step out for
again.
2 minutes. Go to the bathroom, get a cup of coffee. I'll be right back. Okay.
Skip forward by 35 seconds.
Yeah. But the ones. This is what I love though. This is my favorite review of all time. 1-star review. I didn't finish it because it has bad language in it. 1 star.
I love.
That 1 star though pulls down the whole.
Yeah.
I could have a solid 4-star book, but now it is a 3 or 3.5-star book because this idiotic person. Or my other favorite, and this wasn't me. I saw this in another book the other day though. Was somebody gave a review of a book, didn't like it, and they put pictures up and showed it. It looks like somebody scribbled on the cover. Take that up with customer service, not with the author.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
I think okay, so first of all, you cannot be before I go on my anti-Amazon tirade, which may or may not be the rest of the interview. Before I go on, you cannot, unfortunately, and I stress the you cannot be an independent author and not have your book on Amazon. Or sorry, I'll rephrase that. You can't be an independent author who wishes to make money and to get their book out there without having their book on Amazon, right? And that is because Amazon have a monopoly. Now, it is shrinking. We have Kobo, we have Drafted Digital, there's so many ways for authors to get their books out there, and so many ways, more importantly, for customers to find our books, or for readers to find our books, I should say. And it just irks me so much because people who buy things that aren't books on Amazon, they're reviewing, they feel like they're reviewing Amazon's product. And unfortunately, they don't realize that when they're doing the books, they're reviewing Amazon's product, but they're not really, they're reviewing the author. And I don't think people realize the difference sometimes. I had a man on my podcast, Stephen Black was his name. He writes similar-ish style of books to me, kind of supernatural, kind of, but set in the modern day. Fantastic author, really, really good books. Skelly Square is his first one. Sorry, I'm plugging away. I shouldn't be.
Yeah.
But he got a review, and I remember talking about it, and he was so mad. And I'm pretty sure it was him, where somebody said, "Oh, the book was damaged on return, on delivery, 1 star." I was just like, what? Like, do they not? I don't think. Like, I'm sure your listeners realize this because they're listening to you, but like, I don't think people realize that, you know, when you make a review, you really have to think about who are you damaging when you give a negative review. And if it's somebody like myself or yourself who's just trying to eke some sort of a bit of a living, or trying to do something with their time other than work for the man, you know, unfortunately, you're damaging their efforts.
Yeah, it's a thoughtless thing, and you know what, Connor, I don't think I've ever had anyone explain it quite as well as you just did. On Amazon, yeah, they're
And a
just
teacher explaining things is like my bread and butter.
I was going to say, and it really works for me. You know, I'm somewhat enfeebled at times, and I don't always get the message. So you're really good. But I sincerely think, though, that your way of explaining that, people, tell me if I'm right. If I just take this a little further, people, they might as well be reviewing a box, or not a box fan, but a piece of electronics, or they might as well be reviewing some kind of salve or something they got on Amazon, because you will see that all the time, like a review. Let's say a CD player or something. Gosh, how old am I? But let's just say that a CD player. Well, the box was damaged and blah blah blah, so 1 star. Rather than doing the smart thing, which is just talk to customer service and then give a review of the product. But they're thinking of the book this other way, just like you're saying. It might as well be a can of peas or something. They just don't think
Exactly.
of it that way.
Yeah. Like, I have no problem, and this is the other thing. Now, I'm more critiquing the 1 stars that are like the example I gave. You know, oh, the book was damaged,
Right.
or there's whatever. If you're given a 1 star for legitimate reasons, fair enough. Have at it. That's
don't like it.
fine.
Yeah.
You can read a book cover to cover and absolutely hate it, and it is well within your rights to give 1 star, and I do not begrudge that whatsoever. To make sure, I'm sure that was clear, but just to make sure that is clear. My issue is the 1 stars that clearly have nothing to have nothing to do with the book, or the writing of the book, or B, and I've seen this as well, have nothing to do with the book whatsoever and are attack on the author. Because I have friends who are authors, and they have an ex or something that maybe is a bit, and I have seen those reviews of like, oh, you know, I'll just use me as an example, not that I have one of these kind of reviews. Be like, oh yeah, Conor Bredin is a total, I don't know if I can curse or not, so I'm not going to. Conor Bredin is a total XYZ, and he's a bigot, and he's a Nazi, and he's a horrible person, 1 star. Like, Amazon doesn't have a way for me to say to them, hey, look, lads, this review has nothing to do with the product.
Right.
And that really irks me. And they're not going to fix that, because it's within their interest to not fix it. Because look, Amazon wants to make money. So if fixing something means they make less money, they're not going to do it.
It's true. There's a mechanism to report reviews, but I've never once heard of one being pulled off of anything.
Not once. No.
Yeah, it's just to make you feel better, I think. So, Conor, tell us a little bit about your show, because I think after this one, people are going to want to hear a lot more from you than we can do here. But so tell us about the show. Yeah.
So, Story of a Storyteller does exactly what it says in the tin. Do you guys even have Ron Seal? I just realized I said something that may not make sense. Ron Seal? No. It's a type of outdoor paint, and that's their slogan. And it's their ads are everywhere. It does exactly what it says in the tin, and it's kind of embedded in. Like, if I say it does exactly what it says in the tin, I assume people know what I mean. Anyway, sorry, I keep doing that. I'm terrible guest. Talk about your show, Conor. Right. So, Story of a Storyteller is basically born. I like to say Storyteller has 3 dads and no mum. Dad number 1 is me, and my inherent nosiness. Dad number 2 is a writer who has become a very close friend of mine, Mario Delolio. I had just read, self-published as well, and I had just read was it his first or his second, one of his books. It was a memoir of the time he and his husband sold their home in San Francisco, moved to the Caribbean, bought a boat with the money, and then got caught in a hurricane and nearly died. And then,
Oh, wow.
I'm not even like a quarter of the way through the
Wait,
blurb.
there's more.
Oh, there's so much more. And then they got rescued, thankfully, but the boat had to be abandoned, and they had sunk a lot of their savings into it. But then a couple of months later, maybe like 6 or 7 months, I think, the boat was spotted still afloat. So they're like, what? And then they, needle in the haystack, went out to look for it roughly in the coordinates that it was in, and managed to find it. And while they were repairing it, got caught in another hurricane.
Oh my God.
And survived that too, but the boat didn't the second time. So I had just read his book, and I was following him on Twitter because I thought it was such an interesting story. And it is, and it's a fantastic book. Give it a go. And he was doing a Facebook Live reading of another book of his, Body and Soul. And so I was like, I asked a question because he was, it was about, I had said his husband earlier, like Mario's gay, and his book was about a priest and is very Catholic kind of centered. So I asked him a question about, you say you're Catholic, but you're also married to a man. How do you balance those two opposing parts of yourself? And he, like most other people, were like, what's your favorite color? What's it? Like, here's me asking this. And I remember seeing him lean in, look at the thing, go, oh, Conor, that's a really good question. So he's as I say, the second father to the podcast, and then it was in my head, I was like, I do ask good questions. I am good at that. And then and another, I keep plugging everyone except myself. What's going on? Another author then, his name is Chris Agate, but you'll know him as CJ Agate. He is one of the two hosts of the Writing Community Chat Show, which is a UK-based podcast. And it's he tweeted just randomly, and I just happened to see it the day after the Facebook Live video Mario did, saying, why am I always the podcast host and never the guest? And without really putting any thought into it or planning anything, I commented saying, hey, I'm thinking of doing a podcast. You want to be the first guest? So he is the third father of Storyteller. So that's kind of how it started. I then started trawling through my Twitter feed. Twitter is kind of mostly how I make connections. And found 10 guests that I thought would have interesting stories to tell. So it's kind of mostly an excuse for me to be very nosy, but also for me to learn. And it has two ideas behind it. One, it's the tagline of Storyteller is it's a bookworms podcast, because I want it to be something that both people who read and people who write books can get into and be interested by. Because that was one thing that always bugged me even when I was a kid. At the back of the book there might be about the author, and it might be like a paragraph or a page at the most. And for me, it was never enough. Like the only time I ever remember feeling good was Roald Dahl, James the Giant Peach, Matilda, BFG. He has two autobiographies, Boy, Tales of Childhood, and Going Solo. And that was the only time I ever felt satisfied that I knew enough about an author. So that kind of was the start of it. I do 4 seasons of 10 episodes a year. I'm currently, as we're recording this, I'm recording season 3, but by the time this comes out, season 3 will be airing. So check it out. It comes out every Monday. And one thing I always try to do is I always try to get a wide catchment area of diversity in the authors. So I try to get traditionally published. I try to get self-published. I try to get white people, people of color, straight people from the LGBT community, people from Native communities. I try my best to get as far away from my own experience as possible, so that I can learn as much as possible. And if I say so, it's a very funny show too. Like I get on very well with people. It's really fun.
Yeah, I dipped in, and because we talked offline before we started, and it's part of my practice. I try to, if I can, it's been tougher lately, but I try to read as much as I can of the book. If I can't do that, at least delve into the person. And then I found you had this podcast, and I dipped into that, and it is funny, and it moves along, and I just really enjoyed it, and it's got really good production values. There'll be a link in the show notes, listeners. You got to check out.
I'm glad you said it has good
podcast.
production values, because I do it all myself.
Oh, I understand. I totally understand. Yeah. No, it's great. Well, I hate to say it. I've kept you already. It's just gone so fast. But tell us, please, sir, where do we find out more? Because we want to find out more about you. Where do we find that out? What's your website?
Yes. Okay. So my website is very easy to remember, but hard to spell. It's ConorBredin.com, but no one ever knows how to spell it. When people see my name, they can never read it right. And then when I say my name, they can never spell it right. So it's C-O-N. Like it's been a thing since I was 4. So the website is CONORBREDIN.com. So CONORBREDIN.com. And you can also find me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all those kind of things. If you just search for Conor the Geek. It's a quicker way to find me, because I don't like kids I teach finding me on Instagram. Something that happened yesterday. A 10-year-old girl tried to follow me, and I blocked her, and I felt good about it. I sent her this morning. She was walking in. I'll not say her name. I'll say her name was, I don't know, Mary. She walked. I was like, Mary. She's like, yeah. I was like, Instagram? And she just looked at me and gave a bit of a smile, and I went, I blocked you. And she goes, oh. She was so proud she'd found her teacher.
I blocked you.
I blocked you.
I love it.
No,
I love it.
Well,
if we go to the website, you're offering a free download.
Yes,
Tell us
yes,
about that.
I am. So if you go to ConorBredin.com/free book, I have The Stolen Dagger, which is a novella that I have. It is for free, and what I did with The Stolen Dagger is so The Longest Night has 3 point of view characters, but The Stolen Dagger is the 4th point of view character I originally had in the plan that I cut. And if you read The Stolen Dagger, you'll see why I took it out. But it's kind of it's neither a prequel nor a sequel. It's a side quill, I suppose. It kind of happens in the background, and it answers some questions. So it's kind of written in the sense that if you read it first, hopefully you'll be like, hey, I need to know what else happens, and let's read The Longest Night. But it is a complete story. Like you won't feel like I just left it on a cliffhanger to make you buy the book. And also, if you've read The Longest Night first, it's just a nice thing to tide you over until I get my arse in gear and write the next 3.
Well, Conor, I love that. For my series, I did a book of short stories, and 7 of them that were from the perspective of supporting characters, not the protagonist, the lead guy. And he was mentioned, but it's really it's their backstories, the origin stories for some of them, going in the future for some others. And it actually turned out to be a favorite. I think the fans really enjoyed that look behind the curtain with the other characters that they really enjoyed, without having to deal with the main character, who's full of neuroses and probably a little tiresome at times, kind of like me. Oh man, Conor, this has been a
before
delight.
I go, if it's all right, I'm just going to throw a little extra thing in there. So I am going to do something a little bit extra special just for your listeners. So
nice.
If anyone who's listening to this goes to ConorBredin.com/MGO for Mysterious Goings On, so MGO, they'll be able to download The Stolen Dagger, but there'll also be a little how can I say it? I'll just going to put in some extra things, like the plan that I had originally for the book, and I might even throw in something like what possible plot lines I might explore in the next couple of books if they want to get a look at that as well. And that's just for you guys.
Oh, that's okay. Again, that's Conor Bredin /
It's ConorBredin.com/MGO for Mysterious Goings.
I love it. Yeah, and MGO is our shorthand here. I love it. That is so great. Conor Bredin, thank you so much. He is the host of course, his own wonderful podcast. You've got to check it out. It is called Story of a Storyteller. The book is The Longest Night. There are some lovely freebies he's offering you listeners. Hey guys, make me look good. Go download some of this stuff, then read it, and then please review it for him. Wherever you can find a place to review it, please do that. Conor Bredin, thanks so very much for joining us here on Mysterious Goings On.
Not at all. It was a pleasure.
this is Michelle Cox. I'm the author of the Henrietta and Inspector Howard series, and you're listening to Mysterious Goings On.
Thanks so much for listening to Mysterious Goings On. Don't forget we have a complete archive of all of our interviews, monologues, updates, live readings, dead readings. All of that stuff is available at mgopod.com. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to us so you never miss an episode. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the usual suspects. Please join us there. Again, don't forget, mgopod.com also has links where to find me on social media and how to get in touch in case you want to be a guest here on the show. Well, I think it's time that I move on for this week, but until next time, keep reading.